So, welcome everyone. Monday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. My good friend Vitaliy Katsenelson is with us. I've known Vitaliy for a number of years. Tremendous value investor, tremendous human being. I've learned so much from him, and I'm going to embarrass him a little bit.
Oh my God.
Vitaliy is the reason why I am here. Last fall, when I was casting about trying to figure out what to do for my next gig, Vitaliy said, "George, you really should pay attention to your social media presence." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I didn't know what a Twitter space was or anything. So, Vitaliy, it's all your fault. So here we are, 39,000 Twitter followers later. 70 spaces plus an ETF coming out in 4 weeks. It all started with a conversation, Vitaliy. So I thank you. Vitaliy.
Well, I think you have a real talent for this.
Well, we'll
It
see
was
how
e-
that goes.
it was easy to see. So
Anyway, thanks so much. So we're really honored to have Vitaliy here tonight. And for those of you who don't know, he has written. Vitaliy, is this your fourth book now?
it's
Soul
my
in the Game.
third.
Third book. Okay,
Yeah.
the Soul in the Game has come out. Interviews, The Art of a Meaningful Life. It's an incredible read. It touches so many aspects of life, not to mention investing, but really, really delightful read, and I couldn't put it down. I had the book. Vitaliy had sent me the book a couple of months ago, and my homework assignment for this space was I had to read the book. So there. So now I've read the book, Vitaliy. So this should make for an interesting conversation. So let's start off. Just a word about yourself for those folks out there who don't know you. IMA. Maybe just talk just a second about what you do, and then we'll get into your life history in the book, and then we're going to get into markets. Vitaliy, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, George. And first of all, I really appreciate you hosting this space and you hosting other spaces. And I listen to a lot of them. And you have great guests, and you're a phenomenal host. And you're a benevolent dictator, but that's what it takes to to do that. So
You have to be kind of an asshole who's going to do this. You're right. And I qualify on both counts. So go ahead.
well, I called you benevolent dictator. Just
There you go.
Um, all right.
So,
Let me tell you about
yeah, Vitaliy, start. What is? Tell us about you. You've got a shop in Denver. What
yeah,
is IMAUSA.com? Is that it?
yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah. So I'm a CEO and a CIO of IMA, which is a value investment firm in Denver, and we basically so someone who's retired or has a nest egg comes to us, gives us their life savings, and say, Vitaliy, please don't screw it up. And that's basically what we do. We manage money for high net worth individuals, and we create a portfolio of individual stocks. It's a portfolio of 20, 25 stocks, maybe 30 stocks, high quality companies, and our goal is that the portfolio to kind of to get through any market, through any economy. That's basically kind of that's what IMA does. And so I'm at heart a die-hard value investor, and you know I spend most of my time reading financial reports, listening to conference calls, doing that kind of stuff.
So you survived the value investing wipeout, and now it would seem that times are a bit better. That's terrific. So Vitaliy, let's go to you didn't follow the normal route for people in this business. You have a very interesting background now. So Vitaliy, you were born in 1973, but what's more, and from Russia. But what I find really interesting is not just you're a Russian Jew. We can talk about that, but you also come from Murmansk, which is, for those of us here in the States, it's always this crazy Russian place with submarines, and it's way the hell up north. So you just tell us just a little bit, what was it like growing up in Murmansk?
Yeah. So if you look at the map of Russia, you look at the left and you go high, and then you go higher and higher again. And when you reach the tip of Norway, it's right there. Like it's located above the Arctic Circle, where there's a permafrost. And in the winter time, the sun basically comes out for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes a day. and for months. And I'll tell you the story. I would go to school in the morning, and it's dark. And sometime during the day, the sun would come out for 20 minutes, and I'd miss it. And then I would go home, and it's dark again. So I basically, there were period of time in the winter time where I would not see sun for months. And it was sun was such a big deal that when it came, when in the end of February, early March, kind of the sun would start to come out more and more, and they even have a celebration called the Day of Sun. So um, it was a very peculiar place, and so I grew up not just in Russia but in Soviet Russia. So the economy at the time, actually, I did not know a single person who worked for private enterprise. Every single enterprise in Russia, or in Soviet Russia, or in Soviet Union for that matter, was basically owned by the government. From barbershop to shipyard to, I don't know, to pizzeria. Every single one was owned by government. And by the way, just there are some people who have nostalgia towards the new generation has nostalgia towards socialism. I tell you, just don't. It's not fun. Um, but anyway, so we came to the United States in 1991, and I came directly to Denver. And
All right, so Vitaliy, we lost you. You were talking about, it was dark all the time, and then we kind of lost you. I don't
I
know what happened.
apologize. So yeah, sorry, I apologize. Um, so so it was dark all the time, and when not just in Russia, but it was a Soviet Russia. So every single enterprise in Russia was
Right,
owned by government. From barbershops to shipyards to anything.
right,
And I'll tell you, I saw how horrible the government running at businesses. Uh, when I was growing up, the store had only two types of sugar, and the only difference between one and the other was the price. There was a 6 cents difference in price, and it was like that for decades. And
got it.
so anyway, so this is kind of my story growing up in Russia, and I grew up in a very warm, good family, and so I'm lucky. Uh,
So you wind up in Denver, Colorado, and then what was that like for you?
well, so yeah, so our trip to the United States actually lacks the drama that normal immigration story, would have, because we flew from Moscow to Frankfurt, and in Frankfurt to Denver, I mean to New York. Pan Am oversold their flight in economy class, so they put us in the first class. So I flew to the United States first class. When I arrived to Denver, my first was a huge culture shock, and let me tell you why. Because I learned about the United States from watching Hollywood movies, and in the movies they spend most of the time showing you the coast, either West Coast or East Coast. So my perception of the United States was either the skyscrapers or palm trees. And then I come to this Denver, to this place, Denver. There are no palm trees. It's very flat. Most buildings are, 2 stories. And uh,
So you're in Denver, and it's snowing. It's like, where the heck are the palm trees? Is that basically it?
well, yeah, or skyscrapers. Forget about, maybe no palm trees, but where are the skyscrapers? Because I've like my perception of America was like all these tall buildings everywhere. Um, anyway, so that was the first shock. Then you went to the store, and obviously, there's a huge difference, between American stores and Russian stores at the time. And I, so George, so this is a true story. About my first 18 years of my life, I think I had one bottle of Coke or Pepsi. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. I made up for that in the first 2 years of my life in the United States. I made up for all my, lack of consumption of Coke and Pepsi, because
Yeah.
uh, so that's anyway. So that's and then my family settled in Denver. I went to school here. Uh, got my degrees in finance. I actually taught investments at CUD Denver for 7 years, and then I joined IMA in 1997, and been with IMA since. And that's basically.
That's
And I
awesome.
wrote my first book in 2007 and my second one in 2010.
That's awesome. So, Vitaliy, let me ask you, what for the average American? I'm sure Russia's changed a lot since you were there, but I'm sure you're still keeping tabs on what's going on. What is the? Let me ask you this: what are the best things that you have coming from Russia? As a Russian Jew growing up in the dark all the time, and what are the biggest disadvantages that you've had?
Well, my biggest in the first couple of months, the first year or two, obviously the language was a disadvantage, because it took me a while to to learn how to speak English, but then also it took me a while to acclimate to culture, because Americans are very different from Russians. By the way, George, when I say this, excluding you, okay, because Americans usually not very direct, they smile, and then when they smile, like usually things are good. I remember I was fired, like my first job, I worked at a health club, and I was fired. I don't know, 3 weeks later, and throughout this whole process, everybody smiled at me, and I still don't know why I was fired. In fact, while I was getting fired, the guy was smiling at me, which is like not like I promise you that's not the experience you would have if you were in Russia. So um, now, when you talk about the I had this. I think immigrants from like I can speak for immigrants from Russia or from Eastern Europe. They have this advantage because they have this huge burning desire to succeed. Because you can see how the contrast between of where you came from and what this country has to offer is so great that basically lights up so much fuel and so much fire under you. And I would argue that was a huge advantage for me. And I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I would argue that you know usually immigrants do especially from Eastern Europe do fairly well, and that's the reason for that, I think.
Right. Before we just I'm sure it'll come up in questions, but maybe just up top, do you care to offer any insights or opinions, thoughts, anything about what's going on with Putin and Russia right now, and how you see things playing out? What's your own personal view?
My personal view is so biased because I used to say proudly that I'm from Russia and from USSR. Um, I'm truly embarrassed for Russia, and I never thought this war could happen. And I think this is a lot of people would probably agree with that sentiment. Um, the I am hopeful, and but I think the success of this war will really depend on one factor: how much patience the West will have to support Ukraine in this fight. Because at some point, especially when it's close to winter, when the Europeans will have to start paying the price for this war, it's not, they may say, you know what, let's, maybe they will want to put the end to this war, and this, and this, therefore, the support to Ukraine may decline.
What do you think Putin's motivation is? He wants to put the empire back together?
I think so. I think this is, I think that's, I like, and I was mistaken in the beginning, like, well, before the war, that it was really about NATO. It's not. I mean, NATO was a sclerotic organization that basically had no purpose. It was not a threat to Russia at all. This is really about putting, yeah, exactly, the game back together. Yes.
Got it. Okay, let's move on to the book now. There's so much to cover. So and again, it's a delightful read. It's an easy read. But one of the overarching topics in the book about Stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
And you spend a lot of time on Stoicism, and I know you studied quite a lot. So deep knowledge of Stoicism. Just maybe briefly give us a sort of Cliff Notes version of what it is and why it's important to you, and what are the key points that that important for you in terms of how you lived your life and advice you would give to others?
Yeah, so whenever I hear philosophy or Stoic philosophy, my thoughts were just a whole bunch of marble statues of dead folks, and language that I can't understand, or when I stumbled on Stoic philosophy, I realized it's nothing like that. I mean, yeah, there's still statues of dead people, but it's a beautiful, the way I look at Stoicism, it's an operating system for life. This philosophy came out of ancient Greece about 2,000 years ago. But when you read, and there's basically three main figures in the philosophy. Actually, four. Zeno, who was the kind of the founder of the philosophy, but most till this day are by basically Marcus Aurelius, who was emperor of Rome, Seneca, who was a senator, but he was like the Renaissance man centuries before Renaissance. He was a playwright, he was a senator, he was a banker, etc. And then Epictetus, who was a slave. So those are three main characters, kind of in Stoic philosophy. And when you read their writings today, a lot of them, like they could, like you feel like they could have been written yesterday, because what they write is about a human condition, and human condition has not changed in 2,000 years. We are as restless now as we were 2,000 years ago. But anyway, so the way I look at Stoic philosophy, it's an operating system for life, and this is my kind of interpretation of this. When we are born, we come with hardware and software, like the kind of the operating system, and the operating system is basically most obviously, we know, there is some kind of BIOS programming inside of it, so how to breathe, etc., regulate your heartbeat, etc. But how to act, what to do, etc. That operating system, slowly is written by our parents. It's getting impacted by our friends, by books we read, by circumstances. What Stoic philosophy offers a kind of a more formalized operating system of how to without and where you can reduce volatility of your negative emotions. And by doing that, you improve the quality of your life. This is kind of my kind of high level overview of Stoicism.
So, is it something that I know you write extensively on it in the book?
Yeah.
It really is something that you've taken on. It's not just of interest. It's really impacted your life, the way you can.
Yeah. So, George, it's a philosophy. It's a practice. There's this Chinese proverb. Even though I'm not even sure it's Chinese proverb, it could have been written by lumberjack John or something. But it wouldn't be as interesting if I said it was written by lumberjack John. But it's a knowing and not doing is not knowing. So if you learn Stoic philosophy, and so you know it, but you don't practice it, you might you might as well not know it. So it's a really practical philosophy where you by practicing it, you're trying to reprogram, like in my years, almost 5 decades of my life, of 5 decades of behavior. So it's a practice in which I'm gonna try to practice. I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna succeed. I'm gonna fail. And when I fail, I'm gonna try to improve and keep going forward. So let me tell you what really brought me to it. Epictetus has this framework called control. And the Academy of Control basically says, and it sounds extremely simple, some things are up to us, some things aren't. Many things aren't. But what you discover, what's up to us are so few things. It's how we behave. It's what our values are. It's how we react. Everything else is not up to us. What your boss tells you is not up to you. What when you drive to work, if you have red lights on every single street light, that's not. And so once you realize how few things are up to you, you start focusing on them and realize you try to control things you can control, and things you can't control, you let them go. That little realization could completely change one's life, because once you anyway, so that's like one of the kind of I would argue that's probably the most important frameworks that Stoicism has to offer, but there's a lot more.
Amazing, Vitaliy. A lot of what you're articulating, I'm not a religious person, but what little studying I've done in Judaism, I read in the Bible, a lot of those tenets are there. It would seem almost like every self-help book you can find now is it was written thousands of years ago. This is literally nothing new under the sun. And so it's really amazing to hear you recite that.
It's kind of, what's kind of interesting, George. Early draft of my book, I had a few of my friends read it, and they were religious. Some were kind of Orthodox Jews, some were Christians, and all of them made the same comment.
Yep.
That a lot of them reminds them of their religious scripture. Yeah.
100%. All right, so now let's talk about I'm going to jump around here, and we're going to get to the market, so we'll pick up the pace here a little bit. But there are a couple of things that jumped out at me. A couple of passages in here. Again, going back to the Stoics, and now I'm thinking of Twitter now. I don't know what they would have said about Twitter, but you speak about this, okay? And so I'll just quote it. In ancient Greece and Rome, parents took their kids to study oratory skills from the teachers called sophists. The word sophisticated has sophist in its root. Sophists focus on the art of persuasion through both emotion and reason, and kids were taught to argue both sides of an argument. Stoics, on the other hand, put the emphasis mainly on reason, not emotions, in their communications. I don't know. It sounds to me like we might do a lot better these days with having more Stoics and fewer sophists in contemporary times, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and by the way, I'm guilty. Like as a writer, when I write, I'm guilty of being a sophist. But if I was a Stoic as a writer, probably nobody would read me. But it's a very important. This sophistry is extremely important for a couple of reasons. Number one, now I'm talking to when I talk to corporate management, you realize that for you to become a CEO of a company or CFO of a company, you have to be a very good person. Your skills of articulation have to be impeccable. So whenever you listen to, and I find myself, whenever I listen to somebody who's a terrific speaker, I have to remember that this person, even though this person may be not lying to me and they may have a lot of substance, I know that my perception of what they're saying is also clouded by their oratory skills. So when that happens, I remind myself about this and try to kind of write down the bullet points of what they're saying. So I'm not swayed by the emotion and by the skill of the delivery, but I'm really looking at the essence. That's point number one. Point number two, we have to be very careful not to be sophists to ourselves. Now that like a lot of times what happens, we do a lot of self-talk when we talk to ourselves, right? And a lot of times when something happens to us, we over dramatize it by saying, oh, my life sucks and this is bad and this is bad and this is bad. Stoics would tell you to try to kind of bring it down to the bare bones. Marcus Aurelius had this analogy. When somebody brings you this, like when you go to a French restaurant and they have the fish and they have a 2-paragraph describe what that fish is. It's a salmon from Alaska, and the helicopter.
Yeah, exactly. Caught from Vitaliy's backyard, and it was kept as a pet in his aquarium for 9 months before we killed it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That whole nonsense. Exactly. Yeah,
exactly. That's sophistry, right? And what Marcus Aurelius would say, he would say, what you have in front of you is a dead fish with some stuff. Okay, but you know what? That is such an important quality, because a lot of times we do this to ourselves. We practice this sophistry, and a lot of times we take out of small problem, we blow them up into bigger problems, and that ruins our lives. So anyway,
Vitaliy, I'm sorry, you're cracking me up, because for all those in the space right now in the room who like sushi, cut the bullshit. It's a piece of uncooked fish. Let's get real here, okay? So
that's right, and
exactly,
rice, yeah, exactly,
exactly. All right, listen, we can go on. You have a wonderful chapter about abracadabra. You're talking about the means, four modes of communicating: the preacher, the prosecutor, the politician, the scientist. And the first three of them all involved some type of emotion or posturing. And really, you want to be the scientist. You want to know the facts, nothing but the facts. And so, anyway, the book is so rich. We could spend hours talking about it, but I know we want to talk about
sure,
markets as well. And
sure.
so we're gonna, I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions from people about the book. We'll come back on the book, but let's just talk about the markets a little bit here. I can remember being in space with you, last year, and I imagine you're having a pretty decent year right now. So maybe put this in a bigger context. You've been around, you've seen cycles. What's this mark? What are your sort of most highly held convictions right now about the market? Like, where do you think we are in the cycle? What do you like? What don't you like? You don't have to get individual names, but
Yeah.
what are your conviction ideas right now, Vitaliy?
Well, let me talk about the market first. I think if you look at the market today, it reminds me kind of 1999 2000 bubble. Like it's kind of I call it .com 2.0 bubble. Okay, it's never identical, right? It's never identical, but there was a lot of speculation. There was a lot of speculation, and there were a lot of companies, good companies and bad companies, got incredibly overvalued in 99 2000. The same thing happened this time around as well. And what's happening? So when the dot-com bubble burst, it was rotation to value. So that's happening, and there was a lot of kind of the market was declining, but there was a lot of rallies, and I think we are basically kind of the dot-com stocks are going through one of those periods right now, kind of bouncing back. Again, this is I could end up being completely wrong, but this is what it looks like to me. And I look, I spent the last couple of days. I spent a lot of time looking at some of the portfolios of some of the investors who I actually admire, whose portfolio is getting completely bummed out, and the people I know who are very good at identifying. And I look at those companies, and they decline 50, 60%. And I swear to God, they still need to decline another 30 or 40 before they become, mildly interesting. So, so when I look for stocks today, despite the decline in the markets are still expensive, and the companies that generate cash flows, those haven't really declined that much. I mean, I should say differently. The companies that lack the excitement and generate cash haven't really declined that much. So overall, I think our new accounts today, about only 70% invested. So we only have we still have about 30% cash for new accounts. And one of my favorite sectors, we own pipeline, we own pipeline companies, and I think those businesses are kind of going through very interesting transition. If you look at the previous, like from let's say 2013, I don't know, through 2015 or whatever, like they were basically overbuilding, and they were leveraging up, and they had a lot of projects, and they basically just focused on maintaining the dividend, and at the same time, just building out a lot of pipelines. So, long story short, the industry went through kind of they found Jesus again, and now basically they are today they're building very few new pipelines, and they're returning capital to shareholders. So I look at these businesses, all the pipelines that they invested in 7 years ago are coming online. So they start to generate cash flows. Now you have these companies that have a very predictable, stable cash flows, are just paying these huge dividends, which they can support. And what I also like about these businesses, about pipelines, if you think about number one, their revenues have inflation protection, because most of the time they get PPI or CPI, like PPI, like indexation to their revenues. That's number one. Number two, and this is very important to understand, their maintenance capital expenditures are very, very small in relation to their cash flows. Like, I'll give an example. I think, like, like if you look at the enterprise products, and I'm now going from my memory, I think they are like operating cash flows maybe like $7 or $8 billion. Their maintenance capital expenditures are only $300 or $400 million a year.
You serious?
Some tiny number. I mean, I'm trying to show the magnitude. It's very, very small. Because think about pipeline. It's a long-term asset. It's a long-term asset that really requires very little maintenance. So even if you have inflation in metals, etc., the impact on their maintenance capital expenditure is going to be overall is going to be very small. And at the same time, we are going to be producing more in the United States of natural gas and oil, etc. So they'll benefit from that.
Right. So these guys are more volume dependent than they are price dependent. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, yes. And the pricing for their revenues, if there's inflation, the revenues go up. If there is deflation, they don't. So you're protected both ways.
Got it.
So that's probably, without going to specific stocks, that's probably the industry.
Right. That's one you really like. Yeah, Vitaliy, let me ask you a different question. So you're bottom up guy.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you have a macro view, but you're bottom up guy. So the extent to which you're fully invested depends on how many ideas you could find. So you're saying new accounts now would have 30% cash. Well, let's wind the clock back. I mean, say at the absolute bottom for value investing, say end of 2020, beginning of 2021, 18, 20 months ago. I mean, was there a time when you would be like, how high would you get fully in? Were you 100% invested at some point?
Yeah, like maybe 95 or something like that. Yeah, something like
that. Happened as a lot of these stocks went up. You just, as you find fewer things to buy, you just let the cash build up. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, Josh, what we do for every single company in the portfolio, we have a fair value calculated, and then we look at the fair value and in relation to the price. The greater the discount, so like let's say the company we think is worth $100.
Sure.
At $60, it's going to be 2% position. At $50, it's going to be 3. At $40, it's going to be 4. Oversimplifying it.
I get it.
And we do this now, and now we apply it on the full, like on a full portfolio. So when we have nothing, when we have a lot of like in this case $60 stocks, we're gonna have smaller position sizes, for new stocks. Or if this company is now at $80, we would just not be buying it for new accounts at all.
Right. Hey, Vitaliy, that's a very good discipline. Vitaliy, let me ask you 2 questions. How large would a largest position be? What 10%? And also, how many names will you have in the portfolio?
So we have about 20 to 30 names. I think the largest position at cost would be about 7%. Today we have a position which is about maybe 10 to 12%, but that's not at cost. That's
Got it. And so you're always just reassessing relative to target price what the risk reward is, and that acts as your guide.
That's right. Yeah, I think probably average position probably about 5%.
Right. And you still and I mean, I know you don't trade, but there just must be plenty of stocks that just look still wildly overpriced to you,
Yeah, so we look one stock at a time, and we look at it, and we kind of look at company's quality, and then we say how much the company is worth, and if there's margin of safety. And a lot of times you find that there's a lot of $20, $30, and we need to buy $0.40 or $0.50.
Right.
So yeah.
I'm going to ask one broad question, then we'll go to some questions from the folks in the room. Consumer stocks. Consumer, it's very, but consumers are coming under a lot of pressure now with real incomes being eroded by rising inflation, food and energy. Well, it's coming off, but it went up so much. My God. And in particular, retail, where I think, there've been a lot of high profile blowups. Retail companies like Walmart, Target, too much inventory. Sales are coming way below budget, and the outlook is pretty bleak. Do you have any thoughts on consumer stocks broadly or by sector? Do you have any thoughts on consumer stocks?
So no, I think, George, I think you have a question. I am very concerned about inflation. And obviously, so is everybody else now. But I can see, let me just mention some of the sources of inflation, aside from in addition to what our government did over the years. Okay. But in addition, but we also have Russia causes, increase in commodities. But Russia is also impacting prices, the supply of fertilizers, which is of all calories going forward. Also, we have deglobalization, where globalization was deflationary. Deglobalization is inflationary. And high interest rates are actually, if you think about high interest rates drive prices of everything higher as well. So when you bought Lexus and you got 0% financing for 5 years, that's gone. So anyway, so all these things from different directions will be impacting consumer and discretionary income. And by the way, let me give you one data point. When 30-year mortgage goes from 2.8% to 5.2%, that costs the average consumer about $7,000 more a year of interest payments.
Wow.
So on the median home, which is about 300, I forget now the number, 400 something thousand dollars now, or whatever that number is. Okay, so that is about 10% of median income. Median income is about $70,000, roughly, or 60 something. So that's about 10% of somebody's income pre-tax. So I'm very concerned about consumer, and so we reduce our consumer exposure today is almost nothing. So we reduced it, discretionary consumer spending to almost nothing.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so let's just hold it right there. So we'll go to some questions now from the rest of the room. So first, we're going to go with at Op Outdoors, OVO, and then Marcus Aurelius. OVO, the floor is yours.
Thanks, George. Hey, Vitaliy, looking forward to reading the book. I had a quick question. I have several, probably about 5 or 6 buddies that are all from Russia, predominantly Jewish too, and they've all obtained really, a ton of success here, and they're all successful, own their own companies, and all different industries. So it's not specific to that. Just wondering, is there something about given that you were raised there, and sometimes we've never really come up with anything, but is there something about the education system in Russia that really prepares people to succeed in the U.S.? I mean, does that make any sense to you? Or I would just love your perspective on that.
It's kind of interesting. Russia prides itself, so I gotta talk in the past tense. The Russia 30 years ago, I knew. At the time, it was very proud of its education system. And if you went to school, the way they taught you math and effective than in the American system. And there was these teachers were less soft, and they were a lot more the way George conducts this room, kind of more benevolent dictators, kind of. So that was the kind of the Russian education system. And so that's a good thing. That's a good part of it. The bad part of it is that I would argue that American education system on some level is better. So so it has its advantages because um, that system that I was exposed to, they wanted everybody to think the same way. They didn't want anybody to stand out, and therefore, if you had any kind of creativity or if you were different, you had a miserable existence. So like like when I grew up in Russia, I was miserable, like because I was different. So that's my again, and this is very local. This is my experience, and I know I have some friends who didn't have that experience. Um, but I think Americans encourages individuality, and this is why when you come from Russia and you get exposed to this individual, kind of this American freedom, you blossom because it's almost like that oxygen has been deprived from you, and so maybe kind of if you take a Russian and put it like kind of if you take the Soviet Russian and put him in America, and now you allow the person to be who that kind of allow the individuality to come out. Maybe that's why those Russians do so much better here.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Perfect. Great question. Let's go to Marcus and then Gnostic. Marcus Aurelius, the floor is yours. Unmute yourself, please.
Appreciate it. Thank you, George. Vitaliy, pleasure to get the chance to ask you this question. I've myself been on this journey for the last 3 years, and it definitely gives you a different perspective in life and just things. So very share the sentiment. My questions was going to be around deglobalization. I share the same thought as you. I hate to sound grim, but from my perspective, the current moves that have happened between Russia, Saudi Arabia, China, and the breaks becoming more apparent now than it's ever been. I think that I don't think we'll ever see 2% ever again. And for the fact that deglobalization is deflationary, right? So my question to you is, what time frame, right, do you kind of see this unfold in, where we kind of see a standoff from the West and the East? And if that does happen, do you think it'll ever get to an extreme, or is it going to be a passive aggressive relationship? Do you think it's going to be at the height of the Cold War, or is it going to be a mild relationship?
Yeah, well, so I gotta clarify something. We're gonna have a selective deglobalization. In other words, like let's say we're gonna have a factory coming from China. It may or may not go to the United States. It may go to Mexico.
I agree with you, and that's what I was referring to. Apologies, and that's what I'm exactly referring to, because I think Christine Lagarde also made a comment towards this, but it's very inconspicuous. So that's what I was alluding to.
No. So listen. It takes time. Like it takes time, to move factories, to move ecosystems, right? Because like when you think about like when Intel is building a factory in Arizona, right? Or in other companies there, they basically have to rebuild this whole infrastructure. Like so it takes it's going to be a while. I mean, this is not going to be months. This is going to be like more than 5 years, maybe 10 years or more. I mean, it's going to be it's going to take a while. But we are moving that, but the direction to me now is unstoppable. The way I look at it, it's now irreversible. And obviously, the chip that's made by Intel in Arizona is going to cost more than by Taiwan Semiconductor so so that's that's now you have higher prices. So I think the world is going to be this globalization. Basically, we shared same common interest, right? And as we kind of all kind of retreat, or the world kind of breaks into maybe different spheres. Like you have this maybe China Russian sphere, and adds a few countries to it, and then you have this kind of Western sphere with the United States, etc. Then it's kind of the world is going to become like, I think that's what most likely is going to look like. I was thinking about, just off subject a little bit, but think about Russia used to be one of the largest exporters of weapons, of military weapons, and India was probably one of its largest markets, because all Indian weapons are coming off Russians. And today, India has to make a decision because Russia right now is not exporting any weapons. Number one. Number two, because of sanctions, its military factories that made weapons are basically standing still, because they can't buy the steel from Germany for the tanks, etc. And requires microprocessors to make planes, and they don't have them. So it's like, so now, like, India most likely going to have to some point going to be buying Western planes and Western. It's most likely going to go through transition to Western military equipment. And in the past, we didn't think about these kind of things, and now we're going to have to start thinking about it. Who am I buying my tanks from? I mean, just something I've been contemplating lately.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for that, Marcus.
Thank you, Marcus.
No worries. All right, so now we're going to go to Andrew's got his hand up. Andrew, welcome. Please unmute yourself.
Oh, hey, Vitaliy. Great here. I just wanted your take on, if you had a take on Mark Cuban's new online drug cost company, and how it might, disrupt or affect pharmacies, benefit managers, and generic drug companies.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure how disruptive that is. Let me explain why. Because I think the generic drug prices were already incredibly low. So I've seen this, but then I start thinking about the drug, the generic drug you get at the. I'm not sure how much lower they are. Like, so let me first of all, let me plead ignorance a little bit, because I'm not sure how much lower they are to begin with. That's point number one. Point number two, just like most of our medical spending is not paid by us, but paid by third party. So unless you are paying out of pocket for those drugs, you have very little incentive to actually use Mark Cuban's. So I'm not sure. It's how much impact it's going to have on a healthcare cost, because when you have a health insurance and you go to Walmart and you just pay your copay, then you don't even care how much it costs. So just there is not, but I'm not sure how revolutionary that is. Because that's kind of my 5 cents on this.
Yeah, Vitaliy, I remember, and I don't want to put you on the spot. I will try to stay away from individual names. I think I'll this thing because you were very public about it, and I think it was a great pick of yours actually last year. I remember you mentioned McKesson. I think.
Yeah, we still own it. Yeah,
yeah. You still own the stock?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's our largest. It's our largest position today.
Well, what tends? Can you at all? What type of turnover do you have? Like, you tend to have reasonably long holding periods?
Well, that one we own it for 6. Like, this is a great case study, because George, we own it probably for 6 years.
Yeah.
And because I write about some of my stocks that I own, and this one I happen to write a lot. I wrote a lot over the last 6 years, and I tell you this is kind of tells you a lot about patience. I think we bought the stock about $130 to $150, and George, for 4.5 years, the only thing it did, it gave me a headache, and then it gave me all the returns in a year and a half. So that tells you about patience.
I mean, life is not linear. We know that. It's one of the tough things about this business, which actually leads me to another chapter you had in the book. You were talking about a really, really hard time, one of the worst periods you ever had professionally, and the pain that you were suffering. I believe it was around 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Could you speak a little bit about that? And for everyone in the room, because we've all been there before, I always like to say sometimes the market makes you look smarter than you really are, and sometimes it makes you look dumber than you really are. The truth inevitably always lies somewhere in the middle. Maybe you could talk about your bad streaks and learn what's for you.
Yeah. Well, so 2015 started out like a normal year. And then like almost every other month, one of my stocks would get shot, like, decline 20-30%. And then in October, November that year, I remember it just like we had a lot of stocks decline. Some of them, some of the declines, were I could see they were temporary. And then I remember, like, in October 2015, I'm in Israel. I'm on the trip with my friends, and this trip was scheduled, a year before. And my portfolio just the stock that I own is down 80% in one day. And as I look at this company, I realize, actually, in this case, this company may not survive, which rarely happens, where a company declines 80% in one day. And then I realized that I was completely wrong on this one. And I tell you this, I remember so vividly, I was, like, for the first time in my life, truly depressed. And I never ever, kind of thought about suicide, but I could understand the pain people go through that, commit suicide, because that pain, the depression could be this, this pain was just unbearable. And so, in the irony of this, there was a group of us, and we are at this party, and everybody is dancing. There is music playing, and I am like dying inside. And I'm looking at these people, and they're smiling at me, and I'm just thinking, how could they be smiling? Don't they understand how bad I feel? And it felt incredibly, incredibly lonely. So, and I'm sure that's a lot of people. Today this market, is painful for a lot of investors, and I'm sure that's exactly how they feel. And here's the irony of this. I think in 2015 we were down like either 10 or 15%. I mean, now that I look at this, I was George. We were talking in the beginning about being sophist to yourself. I was a sophist. I took the small problem. That's number one. I just I completely self-talk myself into feeling miserable. That's number one. Number two, um, Stoics would tell you that when you're facing a problem, you want to break it up into small problems. Like, and what I did, if I actually looked stock by stock on my portfolio, I realized that most of my stocks were worth a lot more than what they were trading at. One stock wasn't, but again, it's one stock out of 5 stocks, right? So it's that's why I have a portfolio. And so in this situation, it actually helps if you talk, like, imagine if it wasn't you who was going through this problem, but it was a friend of yours. And so instead of talking to yourself, you would try to talk to your friend and explain what he should be doing. So it's very and that actually helps you a lot. And another thing, and this is very, very important, if you're an investor, you should have an expectation that at some point in your investing career, you're going to have a time when your portfolio will decline a lot. And if you don't have that expectation, you should not be investing. Another thing is that pain is actually, like, 2015 was probably one of the most important years of my career, because we changed our investment process after that. And the pain I went through made me realize that quality for me when I analyze companies should be uncompromised. So, like, as value investor, what happens to you a lot of times, the market is expensive, and you start looking for value, and a lot of times you find this company that looks very cheap, but it has problems. It maybe has horrible balance sheet, maybe has bad management or combination of all these different things. And you're like, wow, but it's very cheap. And what I found is that whenever I compromise in quality, I always ended up paying for it. So after 2015, we made a significant adjustment to our process. We started to quantify quality internally, and the quality became uncompromising for me. So when I look at company today, and it doesn't pass my quality test, I just stop. I don't. It's the company is dead to me. So those lessons were, I learned them, thankfully, by going through 2015, and therefore 2015 ended up saving me a lot of money, in the following years. So if you are going through a tough time today, just learn an experience and try. By the way, and this is not me trying to sell the book, but this chapter in the book about, it's called Pain Opera, Pain Opera and whatever, Pain and Investing. That chapter in the book where I talk about my 2015 experience. If you're going through this tough time right now, just buy the book. It's, you can get it on Kindle for $7 or something.
Vitaliy,
No, I'm just no, I'm just,
you make me smile for a second, because when you're talking about having depressed your portfolio, it's sort of like, and I don't mean to insult it, but it's tempted a bad joke, but it's when you're driving down the highway and you see those signs, depressed, please call 1-800, some religious group, battered investment, battered value investor standing by to counsel you on your losses or something.
So George, that's funny you say it, but so what happened? So let me just tell you, this is important. I wrote the chapter in 2016, and I never published it because I just could not bring myself to publish it. But over the time, I had friends that would go, and I would always send the chapter, and every single one of them told me how much it helped them. So I included it into this book. This is the chapter for this is my contribution. This is how I was trying to help other people. So this is, anyway. So that's that chapter. If you're going through tough times right now, the chapter will help you a lot. And I added the most important part. I kind of went through how would Stoics deal with this issue, and anyway. So I'm gonna stop right there.
No, what you say is it echoes what we were talking about earlier. You learn so much more in failure, than you do in triumph. We've all failed, and failure is a feature, not a bug. It comes with the territory, and I think one of the most important qualities is resilience. You can't feel sorry for yourself. You can't let your ego get in the way. You can't climb into an echo chamber with like-minded people to reassure you, telling you how smart you are. You're right, the market's wrong. You're smart, I'm smart. We're all smart together. Which brings me to another question, Vitaliy.
Mm-hmm.
I know you not terribly well, but I know you enough. And to say that one of the characteristics, if someone said to me, we'll describe Vitaliy, I'd say he's a humble guy. He's not an arrogant guy. He possesses humility. And so, we're in a business where by definition, we're making decisions in the face of incomplete information. And if you're any good in this business, you're still going to be wrong, 40% of the time. And so how do you, I imagine, I don't believe you look at technical analysis. I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. But when a stock is acting badly, are you more sort of just, are you more just focusing on the story, the story's still intact? What do you do when, say, the stock's acting really well? I think the worst thing for me is when I have a stock that's acting poorly and I can't tell you why. If I can tell you why, if I can tell you what the bear case is, I can at least address the bear case. But the worst thing is you feel like you're shadow boxing. Something's wrong. You don't know what it is, but obviously not everybody shares your enthusiasm for the idea. And so when a stock's acting badly and you cannot articulate the bear case, but it's acting poorly, maybe it's a macro variable, but just the price action is not what you thought it was
Mm.
going to be given the news. What do you do in a situation like that? Do you reduce positions to reduce your risk, or do you just stay focused on the fundamentals and you figure that the share price will sort itself out eventually? What do you do?
I think when as an investor, I want to be thoughtfully arrogant, and because every time you buy a stock or if you sell a stock, you're basically saying I'm right and the market is wrong, right? So that's where the
Correct.
arrogance comes in.
Correct.
But there are different type of arrogance. There is an arrogance that comes from saying I'm a great person. I have a successful track record. Therefore, anything I do will turn to gold. That is a very dangerous arrogance, right? And then there is a thoughtful arrogance where I earned that right to have an arrogant opinion about this company because I have done a lot of research, and my research is this, and so which happens to be different opinion from the market. So I'll be lying if I told you that when I see a company, I won't decline for no reason if it doesn't make me uncomfortable. But if there is nothing, like if there is nothing else, like if I don't have an explanation for this, and and I feel the margin of safety is still there, etc. If nothing else changes, but just the stock price decline, I'll do absolutely nothing. I mean, but again, for every single company, we've done so much work on this that it rarely happens. Like what happens sometimes is that the stock price declines so much more than we would expect. Than we think is rational, and we go back to models and kind of test our assumptions and stuff. But usually the price decline alone would not let me, without anything else.
Got it.
I would not do it.
Let me ask you about a controversial stock, which everybody knows in this room. I would never ask you about this stock, except you annoyed the hell out of me a few years ago. You wrote some positive comments, if not about the stock, certainly the product. And we're talking about the electric car company that shall not be named. The stock, which you and I sat through enough Jim Chanos Bears and Hibernation conferences. Okay, so I know it doesn't fit with your value for your institutional clients. So I'm just sort of curious. And as one says, there's a big difference between your beliefs and reading your analysis of Tesla, at least the product. I don't recall if you own the car or not, but can you just share a little bit about what was the variant perception that you had on Tesla? I'm not going to ask if you own the stock or not. That's not really.
No, I can tell you that we don't.
Okay. So what was your insight on Tesla? What was, for a value guy to say, "Oh, Tesla might be interesting," like that's pretty interesting. Like, why? What was in your head? What was that? What was the thesis?
I think the couple things. Number one, and probably one of the most important ones, number one, when you analyze Tesla, you have to realize you have to be nuanced. In other words, let me give you an example of nuance. Great company, not a great stock. That's a nuance. Okay, so you have to be nuanced. Elon Musk, brilliant and unethical. Brilliant and you can have a person that has great qualities and bad qualities at the same time. So as an example, when you analyze Tesla, you can always conflicting data points. But anyways, so what gave me a couple insights. Number one, I thought that the electric car, even though it looked a lot like kind of internal combustion engine car, ICE car, it was a very different animal. And my analogy would be just like a Nokia dumb phone made phone calls, and so did iPhone made phone calls. They were completely different products, even though they were both called phones. And my insight was that you need a completely different skill set to make electric car, which is battery motor and a lot of software, than ICE car, which has a very different complexity and it's a much more complex engine, a lot less software, etc. So that was one insight. So my insight was that what people consider to be an advantage that General Motors made, I don't know, 10 million cars, I thought the disadvantage, because it was very difficult for Nokia to transition to making smartphones. And I would argue, and that was point number one. Point number two, I was blown away by the product, and I never experienced a product like that. And George, I'm not a car guy at all. I'm indifferent to cars. Like, it doesn't matter what I drive. But the product was phenomenal. One thing I realized is that basically, when they sell a car, they create a new evangelist for their product, and so they will sell as many cars as they make. That was kind of my So there was it's a more complex answer, but those are kind of the points that come to mind right away, and so that's and so those were kind of the highlights.
So those are really observations though about the company and the product. You weren't at the time. How did that translate into your view on the stock?
Yeah, no. So at the time, I thought it was a path dependent company, and I was right, meaning that in a sense there was a lot of debt. There was no cash flows, and its fate is basically tied to things it can control. So if economy went into tailspin, if the interest rates went up, whatever, the company would might have to, if you were a shareholder, they might have diluted the hell out of you. So I didn't think as a long, but as a short, I didn't think it was a good short, because I also realized if things play out well, then we get to escape velocity, where they'll be able to, kind of, to finance themselves, and then once they get to scale, who knows, they can take market share from others, and and make millions of cars.
Got it.
So this is why like it's kind of funny when I wrote a you can buy it on Amazon. It's I don't know, it's 50-page research piece on this, so you can go to my website and download it there. And both bulls and bears hated me because
Vitaliy, I always love you. I never hated you. I hate you wrote that.
No.
But let me make an important point here. Like, I mean, an ARC research report on Tesla is not worth the paper it's written on. However, when I see a smart guy like you, who I respect, put in, a positive word, his product in the company, maybe not the stock, that really made me sit up and take notice. Because you're not a Kool-Aid drinker, far from it. You tend to be more on the skeptical end of things. So to me, there was tremendous information content in the fact that you were, you had something positive to say. So you were right, and I was wrong. So there. So take that, Vitaliy. All right, let's go to LC. LC, you had a question? Please unmute yourself, LC.
Yeah, a couple of quick ones. One, if you're managing money for individuals, balance the dynamic between what you think is right, but contrast that with kind of managing the relationship with the individual client, who might have insights that are inconsistent with what you think is the right thing to do with the portfolio. And to that end, do you manage the same approach or the same exact portfolio for everyone, or do you kind of customize that around each client's views?
That is a great question for that. So the way it's kind of, I made it a little bit different, is that our marketing is is not traditional marketing. Is that when somebody reaches out to us and they want to talk to me or to somebody in my firm, we have them read a 40-page brochure, and only after that, and by the way, most of the time, people who become our clients, people who read my articles for years. So usually, so there's people that come to us, they come to us for what we do. If somebody, so so there is a like much greater alignment up front. And by the way, when I talk to somebody on the phone, to prospects on the phone, it's the interview that's going both ways, because I'm looking to, it's the person is not interviewing, it's not just that person interviewing me, I'm also interviewing that person to see if that person is the right fit, if there is right philosophical fit. That's to answer your question number one. Question number two, we have two portfolios. We have a kind of a core value portfolio, and we have a dividend portfolio. And we created a dividend portfolio because I saw how many people were buying this bond substitute stocks like Oaks and Kimberly Clark's, and I realized these people will blow up when interest rates go up. And so we created a portfolio where the margin of safety is not as high per se as a lot of stocks we own, like in a value portfolio. But still safe. But I don't have to worry about that portfolio declining substantially, like when interest rates go up. Just because you're buying undervalued companies that also pay dividends. But anyway, so that's number one. So we have two portfolios, and then when clients come to us, we allow them. Customization happens two ways. Number one, each portfolio will look differently because stocks we bought 6 months ago may not be the same stocks we're buying today. So that's number one, customization. And number two, which is very important, is clients have some of our clients have social beliefs. Some of our clients don't want to own tobacco stocks. Some don't want to own pipelines, which we own, and whatever. So when they become a client, they tell us which industry groups to avoid. So, and this is how we practice socially responsible investing. We basically let clients decide what their social beliefs are, and we just exclude those stocks from their portfolios when you buy them, if you buy them.
So that's a really good question. Great answer, Vitaliy. Quick, Vitaliy, that prompts the Michael Pantrowitz is in the audience. He may want to weigh in on this. But when you're a bottom stock picker, I get it. But when you assemble your portfolio and you look and you see what it looks like, and you might stop and consider, well, do I have a bias towards economic defensive or cyclicals, high beta, low beta, good balance sheet, bad balance sheet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And especially given, everyone is so factor conscious in their portfolios now. Not that you will slavishly follow the factor optimization, but at least causes that you're implicitly making in your portfolio.
George, I'm not even sure what the factors are. So okay,
there you go. That's an answer.
Yeah, that's an answer. I'll tell you this. It's kind of a funny story. I have a client who wanted me to have a dividend portfolio. I'm like, great. So, and then he comes back to me maybe 6 months later and says, Vitaliy, the yield of the portfolio is much less than you told me what the portfolio would have. And I looked at it, and he was right. The yield of his portfolio was a few points that I told him up front. And then I realized this person says he doesn't want to own tobacco stocks, he doesn't want to own energy stocks, he doesn't want to own MLPs. So they like those companies, each one of these groups at the time was yielding 7% or more. So my point is, when clients impose their social beliefs on them, then I tell them that they will be the ones who will pay the price for that.
Right. No, it's 100%.
Yeah.
Hey, slightly different stuff. So Colorado has been a longer real estate markets top quartile, I think, in the country last year or two. Could you just share with us a little anecdotal observations of what's going on in your part of the country with respect to real estate markets?
Oh, I can. So my brother is a realtor, and you met my brother Alex. It's I think until, and this is kind of completely anecdotal from my brother, until April, my brother was complaining to me all the time, so Vitaliy, I have a client who wants to buy a house. We make an offer, then offers come in, and we don't buy the house, and the house gets sold for 20% more, like above asking price, or 15% more above asking price. And this was happening all the time. Then my wife was wanting to look at a new house, and she called me up and says, "Do you want to look at the house nearby?" I said, "Sure." We go there, and this house that's selling for $1.2 million. And George, when we drove up to the house, it seems like it's a Black Friday at Walmart. In other words, it's like there was no arc. We go into the house. We go into the house, and it's like there was no place to breathe. And I'm like, I just walked in and I left, like, because I'm not gonna I've seen this movie before, right? This house sold it I would argue when we were there for the open house, I would argue that the house already sold. The realtor probably used it to get new clients, but anyway, sold for $300,000 more. It's a $1.2 million house sold for 1.5 just in a matter of days. Now that is like either April. Now the opposite is happening. Now my brother says my brother loves to complain, so now he's complaining. He says, I have people who want to sell houses, and they just don't sell. It's so the inventory is rising, and the prices start to drop. And you know how this how real estate market works. You have two extremes. On one side, you have people who need to sell the house, like they must because they're moving to another state or something, and then you have people who would like to sell a house. Well, that's fine. People who would like to sell the house, they don't want to sell because they remember the house used to be worth $800,000. Now it's $700. They feel like they feel like they're getting a bad deal. They don't want to sell. And the people who must sell the house, they do sell, but they get much lower price. So this is the state of the real estate market in Denver. Though I'll be honest, that's probably very similar to most markets today.
Yeah, that's interesting. Another Colorado specific question for you. Something I always wondered about. So Colorado was being one of the first states to legalize marijuana.
Yeah.
And I know there was a lot of excitement about tax revenues and this and that and everything else. So a few questions. Whatever is noteworthy. I'm probably not going to ask the right question, but I'm going to try. So A, has it generated the tax revenues that people were hoping for? And then B, what has it done with respect to either crime or car crashes, people driving under the influence of marijuana, et cetera, et cetera? Anything noteworthy about how life in Colorado is since the legalization of marijuana occurred?
So I can't answer the first question. I just don't know. I just really don't know the answer to that. But I know that it's the revenues must have been up a lot because they taxed the hell out of it. I did not notice. I'll be honest, I did not notice any difference. And let me tell you how oblivious I am to this. I was driving by this place which called Green something. I forget. It was a Green something, Green Concept or something. And for a long time, I thought it was like a salad bar, like some kind of fast food restaurant and stuff. I realized that it was a dispensary. That's how oblivious I am to this. And so it's almost like nothing happened. I don't know the difference.
That is classic Vitaliy. You thought it was a salad bar. All right, go on. Sorry.
No, that's but I don't really have a good my point is I didn't really notice the difference. I haven't looked. I mean, I probably should look. I haven't looked at the statistics of
All right, so but suffice to say, you have no marijuana exposure in your portfolio. But you
I can barely function without it.
Yeah, but you have owned tobacco stocks, haven't you?
Yeah, no, that's I own tobacco stocks. Yeah.
Right. Got it.
And by the way, part is the business for a second. If you look at growers in general, like if I ask you to name me a rich broccoli broccoli farmer, you probably won't be able to name it because it's a commodity, because it's a commodity and it's a race to the bottom. And in all honesty, raising pot is the same thing. Just the same way, by the way, raising pot is not much different than raising tobacco.
I agree with that.
Anyway, so that's
Yeah. Okay. So switching out of stocks on a more important subject. So,
Mm.
like, I still have to lose a few pounds, and I'm sure there are other folks in the room who do. And I remember from one year to the next, you had a stock split. I don't know if it was a 3 for 2 or 5 for 4, but I know you got religion about your diet, and I should talk about the book.
Yeah, yeah,
And you also talk about having walking meetings or trying to go for walks,
yeah,
meeting
yeah,
people. So these simple little life, and also you don't eat desserts at all. So can
yeah.
you talk a little bit about, like, how did you get on the straight and narrow, like not eating desserts, no more sugar, and also how much do you walk every day?
So okay, so let's start with walking. I walk about 40 minutes to an hour a day. Depends, sometimes more. But I walk every single day, and I either when I walk, I either listen to audiobooks or talk on the phone. Like, to me, like right now it's a summer, so the sun comes out, like it gets hotter sooner. So I walk from 7 to 8, or in the winter time I maybe walk from 9 to 10 or something. So because it's not as hot. So what happened was that when I got into my 40s, I realized that the the previous 40 years were much easier, and that it's if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm probably gonna have heart issues, and I'm probably gonna be much fatter, heavy. So I realized I have to make some adjustments, and I started to work out, and the workout part was kind of difficult because I tried to work out before, and I could never stick to working out. And I realized that I have a willpower to quit things, but I don't have willpower to acquire new habits. So I did this working out was kind of interesting. I hired a trainer, and for the last 4 years, I have a training. I work out with a trainer on the day at 8 a.m. and an appointment on my calendar, and nothing. It's a and nothing. I never cancel it unless it's a dire emergency. So that's how I got to work out. About desserts, George, when you go to a restaurant and you're done with your main course and they bring you dessert menu, and if every single time you have to make a decision, that I'm gonna eat the dessert or not, that consumes energy. And later in the day, you have a lot less energy, you have a lot less willpower, and so you're most likely gonna say yes. Now imagine, George, if I um like yeah, I don't know how if you eat pork or not, but let's say you're a religious Jew and you don't eat pork. If I offer you pork, you're gonna say I don't eat pork, right? And it's gonna consume very little energy from you to say no, right? Because it is part of your identity that you don't eat pork. If I offer you a cigarette today and you don't smoke, you say I don't smoke, and again, me offering a cigarette will do absolutely nothing for you because you're a person who doesn't smoke. So if you tell yourself I'm the person who does not eat desserts, and it's actually becomes a lot easier not to eat desserts because every single time it's what I call a half binary decision. It's, in other words, instead of saying yes or no, it's always no. So you consume very little willpower. And like I basically when I'm in Denver, I don't eat desserts, and it's a drives my mom. Like I also don't eat, like when I'm in Denver, I don't eat meat. Like when I say meat, I don't eat steak. I eat chicken, fish, etc. And it drives my mother-in-law crazy because we'll go to her house and they would make shish kebab or whatever, and she would offer it to me. I said, "Sorry, I don't eat steak," and she's like, "Well, just one time." And I said, "You understand? There is no such thing as one time. Like if I eat it once, I'm gonna start eating it all the time." And that's how I stopped eating sugar. So I don't, you know, I diet a little bit, and I write about this in the book. Whenever I travel outside of Denver, and either I get to the airport or I travel 50 or 100 miles outside of Denver, I have no diet. So when I travel, like I just came back from Europe, and in Europe I had ice cream every single day, I had steak, etc. And George, I got to tell you, I enjoyed that ice cream so much more. I enjoyed that steak I had there so much more. And that's so I figured, like, I call it 8%. Kind of realized that I travel about 8% of the time, so that's that's also part of my diet.
So basically, by just having a blanket rule, you're not going to have sugar, you're not going to have dessert, you're not going to have steak. It's hardwired into you. You don't have to waste any energy thinking about it. So Vitaliy, let me ask you this: between the dietary restrictions and walking 40 minutes or an hour every day, I mean, you've lost a fair bit of weight over the last 2-3 years.
Well, I lost weight. I also been working out, so I gained weight as well. So basically, in other words, basically I look fitter, but I basically roughly about the same amount of weight. Plus, it fluctuates 5 pounds or more. So I probably have a little bit more weight because I just came back from Europe. And another thing I do every morning, I take cold showers.
You take cold showers. What's with that?
Yes. Well, so there's a
yeah. There's a part in the book. You're crazy. Your kids jumped in San Francisco Bay when it was like 53 degrees or something like what hell's that?
Oh, God.
Yeah, what's with your kids, man?
Well, I know. So the book. So my book. So I'm gonna self-promotion a little bit. My book was endorsed by Wim Hof, and some of your listeners will know. And Wim Hof is this crazy Dutch guy who set 25 world records. He goes by the name Iceman, doing insane stuff in the cold weather. George, he climbed Kilimanjaro barefoot.
What?
No, absolutely. Look it up. He swam under ice for 65 meters or some insane stuff. He walked in the if you read up on him, it's just it's crazy. But he's a huge advocate of basically doing stuff in the cold. And it's one thing I noticed, and there's I'm not an expert on this, on that part of it, but the basically shocks your body, it's releases toxins, and it's actually good for you. So there's health benefits. I'm doing it for a different reason. I'm doing it because when I wake up in the morning and I turn on a cold shower, and I look at this cold water, and I so don't want to go into it. And then I tell myself, well, what's going to happen to me? I'm still going to, I'm not going to die. It's not like if I was jumping off the plane with a parachute, like, yes, I can see the risk, and there's a very tiny, tiny risk that I will die. But there's nothing's going to happen to me if I get in the cold water. So I use my willpower to get into this cold water. And the first 30 seconds, I'm uncomfortable, and then I feel absolutely fine. And I kind of train myself doing things that I kind of don't like. That's what it's for. And also, in the morning, it wakes me, it wakes me up, and I feel like I love doing it, especially after workout. So that's part of my health.
All right. I got one more question for you. Again, if anyone wants to ask Vitaliy about anything from stocks to 50 water to 20-minute sunlight on days growing up in Murmansk, have at it. Here's your chance. Raise your hand. So, Vitaliy, last question for me anyway. Classical music. Why do you write about composers so much? And maybe share with us, I don't know, the story or about who is your favorite or most interesting composer.
So Freddie Mercury has this song that's called "There Must Be More to Life Than This." This is my realization. When I used to write only about investing, and I started writing about life and classical music, it gave me more meaning in life. And classical music composers were creators, and they had a very interesting life. And you listen to their music today, and like you listen to Tchaikovsky music, and you think how great it is, but you don't realize how much pain he went through to compose that music. Okay, so and the story I'm going to tell you actually not about Tchaikovsky, but about Berlioz, who was, I forget, he was French. I think he was French. Yeah, he was in France. Yes. He's a French composer, Jewish French composer. And the reason I remember he's French, because a few years ago I've been to his birthplace, Grenoble in France. Anyway, so this guy wants to study music. His parents, just like any Jewish parents, wanted to become a doctor. So they're against him studying music. So later, basically, when he was 13 to 15, which is for classical music, that's late, he basically overrules his parents and starts studying music. And when in his 20s, he goes to the Shakespeare play and falls in love with the Shakespearean actress. And I'm going blank of her name. Her last name is Smith. I forget her first name.
I'm looking up. Her name is Harriet Smithson. Harriet Smithson.
Yeah, Harriet Smithson. Yeah, and he falls in love with her, and she completely ignores him. So he rents an apartment. Across the street from her, and basically consumes a lot of opium, and writes a symphony dedicated to her. He wants to become famous and to win her heart. And he succeeds. He writes a symphony called Fantastique. And she does not hear it at the premiere. But if a year later she finds out that this guy wrote a symphony for her, she hears that they get married. Her career as a performer is declining. She starts drinking, so the marriage falls apart. But the fact is, he actually wrote a symphony for her just because of her. And what's interesting about this is that Berlioz did not receive classical training, and his Symphony Fantastique broke all the rules of symphonies composed at the time. It was what's called a program symphony or program music. Like when you think about opera is a program music because there is a story and then there is a music written around it. So Berlioz' Symphony Fantastique did not follow traditional rules, and it was a program music. So he has this crazy story, which I don't even remember very well, that he wrote and then wrote music around it. And my point is, a lot of times, if you know the rules, it's difficult to break them. But if you don't know the rules, it's so much easier breaking them because you don't know them. And I think it's exactly what he did. So this is why I like this story.
That's awesome. That's a great story. That's terrific. All right. So, Vitaliy, this has been wonderful. So, again, Soul in the Game, delightful read. It's not just about value investing, but it's about life and Stoicism. Terrific book. I really enjoyed it. Hold on. We got one more question here. I think coming in. Oh, a couple questions. So I want to go to, here we go. MQ, and then Igor. MQ, the floor is yours. MQ, unmute yourself, please.
Thanks, George. Appreciate the opportunity to ask a question. Thanks for hosting the space. And Vitaliy, thanks for being here. I just had a question. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your investment process. How do you pick portfolios for clients? Do you tailor them individually? If you could talk a little more about your time frame and whether, I'm curious if you use options.
MQ, I think we kind of covered that a little bit. I don't know if you just came in recently, but Vitaliy was talking.
If you did, I apologize, and I will listen to the recording. I did join recently. I got out of work late.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I think we touched
on that. Let me answer it partially. I'm not going to repeat myself, but basically, MQ, we look when we buy companies. Even though they're public companies, our process is not that much different as if we were analyzing a private company. If I was buying a whole company, so which has been a Warren Buffett-esque process, right? So I'm not just buying a piece of paper. I have an attitude of buying a whole business. as if I was owning for 10 years or longer. Okay, so liquidity is my friend. In other words, if this company gets overvalued, etc., I'll sell it, and if it gets undervalued, I'll buy more. But I'm not looking to buy a company and sell it in 6 months. So we're looking to own the stocks for a long, long time. So we have a long-term time horizon, and basically we're looking for three things. We're looking to buy. What does quality mean? It's basic companies that have good management, good balance sheets, significant competitive advantage, high return on capital, this kind of things. And we want them to have some growth. And growth is part of, so you have quality, you have growth, and we want to buy them at a discount to fair value. So we want to have a margin of safety. That's basically, and we just do this kind of one company at a time. That's our process.
Thanks, Vitaliy. Thanks for the question, MQ. Hey, Igor, the floor is yours. Unmute yourself, please, Igor.
Thank you, George. I want first of all to thank Vitaliy from the bottom of my heart on the book. I'm also an immigrant from the Soviet Union that came around the same time. I do skiing, so a lot of what he wrote was near and dear to me, and some of the ideas that he put in the book really resonate with me, since we had a lot of similar upbringing and experience. Now, the question that I have is related to how you incorporate macro, if at all, into your stock investment. We talk a lot about, bear markets and cyclicals not doing well, and, industrials, and this and that, right? So I know that, if you go into recession, right, no matter, how good your stock is, right, valuation-wise and fundamentally, it will likely go down because people just don't have the money to buy stocks, right? Do you care a lot? Do you care at all about it?
Okay, so I'll give you three answers. What Seth Klarman, he said, we worry macro, invest micro. What does worry macro mean? So instead of trying to be worry about the weather, I'm trying to worry about the climate. So if I worry about the weather, meaning that I'm going to try to figure out what the economy is going to do the next 3 to 6 months, what the interest rate is going to be in the short term, what the Fed is going to do in the short term, this kind of thing. The problem is that, if you spend a lot of energy on trying to figure out what the weather is going to be tomorrow, that energy is going to be completely wasted the day after, right? So, and in all honesty, people are fairly bad at this. Like we are. It's just very difficult to predict what the economy is going to do in the short run. So what we try to do instead is focus on big macro trends that are that's going to be like climate changing events, and then tweak our portfolio to the, or at least not to get hurt by that. So this is how we look at macro. This is kind of our approach to macro. And Igor, timing the market is incredibly difficult. And I don't think I've seen many people who've done it well more than once. And it's kind of like the worst thing that can happen to you a lot of times. You get it right once and you feel like you got it figured out. And then, you never did it again. George, you remember the Elaine Garzarelli?
Oh yeah.
And she was a wonder in 1987, and then she never got it right since. And there are hundreds of examples like this. We don't time the market.
Thanks, Igor. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good. So Vitaliy, I hope we'll do this again before too long. This has been great. Again, Vitaliy's new book is Soul in the Game. And if you want to look into, he manages money at Denver. It's IMAUSA.com. Is that right, yeah. Vitaliy?
Yeah, George. And by the way, if you buy the book, go to soulinthegame.net, and there are instructions how you can get 5 new chapters I wrote already after the book came out. So I keep writing and keep adding to it. So go to soulandthegame.net and you'll see how you can get new chapters. And by the way, George, I really want to thank you. You not just for this space, but you're doing such a wonderful job, putting the spaces together and moderating. And I'm so thankful for you, and I think everybody is as well.
Thank you for the kind words. Hey, Vitaliy, would you be up for doing a space on just classical music at some point?
Sure.
All right. Well, it may not be the most well-attended space I've ever done, but
it's just going to be you. It's like I'm sure it's going to be you and I can have a phone call, or we can have a space. It's going to have as many people listen to it.
You know what? Maybe we could have a special inducement. We'll throw in some stock picks in between the music.
Right. That's right.
There you go. All right, listen, everyone. Thanks everyone for coming out. Our next space is Thursday morning. It's gonna be a great space. Edward Chancellor, with his new book.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, with his new book. It's called The Price of Time. By the way, I'm getting killed this week, Vitaliy. I had to read two books. I had to read your book, and I got to read his book. And I got to read his book.
So the downside of this social media fame is that you have to read more books now.
No, but you want to know something? People say, why do I do this? This is actually, I learned so much from these rooms. Listening to, I get to hear your latest thoughts. I'll hear Ed Chancellor's latest thoughts. So it helps me with my process. So don't worry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. So 11 a.m. Eastern is our next space. Again, thank you, Vitaliy. Good night. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you.
See you on Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.